One thing Trump did do with his time, Will, is pick a fight with China, and this was very intentional. And part of that escalation now is moving forward with at least three weapon sales. But actually, I read today that there were two more that the U.S. is moving ahead with, and so it looks like a massive round of weapon sales coming to Taiwan, which will of course upset China. One of the weapons are the high mobility artillery rocket systems. There's also long range air to ground missiles that are going to be sold, and then upgrades to the F 35 with new weapon sales. And you know, that were, I believe Reuters reported that the White House was moving forward with today, included the Reaper drones and a coastal defense system, but basically a bunch of missiles to defend the coast of Taiwan. And so this is a serious round of weapon sales. You know, this isn't just a couple tanks, which aren't necessarily maybe very effective, and then you know a couple upgrades to current weapon system. A lot of these are again artillery, missiles, rockets, stuff like that. And of course, China is going to be very upset about this because the reason Taiwan is buying these weapons is not maybe to launch an offensive against China, but certainly to have the capability to maybe deter Chinese aggression, or there's territorial disputes between Taiwan and China regarding you know the seas around Taiwan. And so if Taiwan's looking to maybe extend a little bit more autonomy over those areas and control over those areas, these weapons could be important. And Will, I'll let you jump in on this and just what do you think the maybe importance of the weapons are, why China is so upset about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you did a good job just like summarizing the basic facts of these arms deals. They're at various level, like stages of approval right now. We have these three, like you mentioned, the HIMARS rockets, the air-to-ground cruise missiles. Those are made by Boeing. Lockheed makes the rockets, and then there's like these sensor pods. They're selling them for the F-16. Like it really is just a big bonanza for arms contractors, and of course the Taiwanese like this to for their whatever their chances against the Chinese. I don't expect that they're going to be in a hot war anytime soon, although that is sort of what they're preparing for. However, I think we might be talking about the same report, this Reuters report. I think they had mentioned that there are seven major like U.S. weapon systems making their way through the export approval process, all for Taiwan right now, including the three that we just summarized. But yeah, apparently they're also going to be sending drones and some other kind of missiles, and also I think underwater mines as well, like to prevent like amphibious assaults, which would be how the Chinese would have to obviously invade Taiwan. Um, and so I mean, like we are seeing the Trump administration has sold Taiwan quite a lot of weaponry. Like, and this is like these seven like weapon systems that are about to be sold to them. That's all on top of like a bunch of other sales we've already made. I think there were like 66 F-16s that we sold them, 108 Abrams tanks, as well as over, I think, $1 billion in like radar systems and other missiles and torpedoes and weapons parts. And so there's been all kinds of like, weapons sales to Taiwan under this administration. Previous presidents have approved them or have overseen those types of weapons sales, but Trump has been like stepping those up quite a bit. And I think that is obviously part of his administration's like I don't think you call it a pressure campaign. I guess you could call it that, but his sort of campaign of hostility toward the Chinese, which has taken place on all kinds of different fronts, whether it's trade or like hemming in certain Chinese companies or carrying out all kinds of military drills out right in China's backyard. We've covered quite a bit of that on the show. But I guess just like for people who aren't all that familiar with the situation with maybe the context of like why there even is tension between the two. And so effectively after World War II, there was a civil war in China between then the government, the Republic of China, and the communists. And by 1949, the communists won, and they kind of pushed the former rulers out, and they fled to Taiwan and basically became a government in exile. And since then, they've run this like breakaway state there, which they still call the Republic of China. And so this is like the leftovers of the pre-communist government in China. That is like what is ruling in Taiwan. Of course, though, the current Chinese government, the communists, the CPC, they see Taiwan as like still as a province of China proper, and they say it is not a separate country. And so that's sort of like a source of a lot of this tension here, this dispute between the Chinese and the Taiwanese. And the U.S. has basically sided with Taiwan in that dispute. And we sell them weapons and give them all kinds of other like rhetorical support. And while I don't think the Taiwanese have actually formally declared independence from the Chinese, that is exactly what Beijing is concerned about when they see all these weapons deals and they see Taiwan cozying up to the U.S. Not to mention the huge military U.S. military presence in the region, like sometimes literally in the Taiwan Strait. We often sail warships through there, and so China sees all this stuff and they're worried that like this will embolden the Taiwanese to declare independence someday and look for international recognition as their own country, which the U.S. would definitely be among the first to give. And so sort of that is like I'm not an expert certainly on like Chinese Taiwan relations, but that is just like the basic situation there. That is why there's tension. And the US comes down on the Taiwan side in that whole dispute. I don't have a super strong stance on like, the Taiwanese claims, but generally I do side with people, seeking independence or secession or autonomy or whatever from some kind of imperial center. But I am also very skeptical usually wherever the US is trying to get involved and whatever side they're backing. So like I think you may agree with me here. Like I can respect the Taiwan's desire for autonomy from the mainland without sort of endorsing the U.S.'s attempt to meddle in that and to make that happen, to make them autonomous. So I mean that's my stance on a lot of different things, whether it's Iran or Venezuela or North Korea. I always support these people trying to fight their own governments. I just don't want to see my own government get involved, because we see their track record and it's usually a bloodbath and a disaster. And so, that's reason to oppose it, I think.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point, Will. And just to add, it seems like the increase in U.S. weapon sales to Taiwan are correlating with an increase in U.S. commitment towards Taiwanese defense and also provocative actions against China on behalf of the Taiwanese, including, as you mentioned, sailing warships through the Taiwan Strait, which has happened at increasingly frequent rate under the Trump administration. You have to wonder if that's part of what Taiwan feels like they're buying. If you just look at a map of Taiwan versus China, realize that China has one of the world's largest economies, now one of the largest military budgets and stuff like that. It seems like if China really wanted to retake Taiwan, there's not a whole lot the Taiwanese could do about it. Certainly, they could maybe set it up so that they're able to inflict pain on the Chinese mainland and try to make it that it's not worth, but if China wants to do it, it seems like just based on scale and what military power would be, they could. So my guess is that Taiwan is really trying to buy, U.S. defense commitments here. And that's just something that the U.S. shouldn't be committing to. It doesn't benefit any of our security, whether Taiwan or China or whoever the CCP controls that island off the Chinese coast. And it's hard to imagine that the U.S. could effectively fight China for that island just based on how close it is to the Chinese mainland and how far it is from the U.S. China has some pretty good anti-ship missiles, and so if the U.S. plans on just sending over a barrage, full fleet of aircraft carriers and destroyers and stuff like that, it may not turn out so well for the U.S. or even the people of Taiwan. And so I'm not sure what the long-term strategy is here, other than just it seemed to be poking the Chinese dragon over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very like provocative and antagonizing. I guess one thing that could be done by like U.S. lawmakers to start to cut, because I think there's actually a legal commitment to arm Taiwan with like what they call defensive weapons. We were recently talking about the whole Israel thing with their qualitative military edge and how there's a law that mandates we have to maintain that. Well, it's a similar thing with Taiwan with providing them defensive weapons. So that would be one thing to start cutting against. That I think it's called the Taiwan Relations Act to start changing this relationship.
Well, it's interesting because the U.S. also, believe legislatively supports the One China policy that recognizes that Taiwan is a part of China too, and so we have all these kind of conflicting policies and ideas when it comes to Taiwan, and
Right.
just create a real geopolitical quagmire for the U.S. that likely I think will just end up costing us a bunch of money and gain a lot of our government killed. The last thing I'll just mention is that I think people have the idea that one of the big things that this does is creates a lot of jobs in the U.S. and one of the real advantages of it is we're selling American-made stuff around the world, and isn't that great? But a lot of the times it turns out that the estimates from these weapon sales are way inflated and actually far fewer than they pretend. And a lot of the times the money ends up in the hands of, you know, the former generals or congressmen who are now working as lobbyists or board members of Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Boeing, and stuff like that. And it, you know, it doesn't create a bunch of factory jobs or, you know, what people imagine are, you know, like the blue class, you know, blue collar jobs that the people of America want. So, Will, anything else before we wrap up here?
Nope, I think we hit touched all the bases.
All right, everyone. Before you, you know, close off the show and everything, just think about following me and Will on Twitter. That's where, you know, you get all of your work. Will's a staff writer at RT, so he publishes, you know, several articles